Economics has long been misunderstood as the dismal science, and it shouldn't have been this way. In the 19th century, when slavery still existed, economists were known for their anti-slavery standpoint. So in Britain, therefore, the pro-slavery writers gave economics the label, the dismal science. So unless you love slavery, you shouldn't say economics is dismal. And nowadays, many of us still regard economics as a dismal science for different reasons. There are students who think economics is all about hard math, and so it is boring. And the adults in the industry who think it is just a bunch of abstract ivory tower jargons that has nothing to do with real life. Or they'll think it has some mysterious power to predict the stock market. Or maybe someone who thinks that it's able to manage an international financial conspiracy. And then there are people who just make jokes about how economists are so ambivalent that they always like to say on one hand and on the other hand. And all these views are misleading. Real economics is not boring. It is not a foreign language. It's not math. It's not magic. And it's not dismal. For the past 20 years, my goal has been to change these stereotypical views of economics and trying to show people what real economics is. And 2 years ago, I launched an online economic course, and since it began, the course has attracted over 300,000 paid subscribers, including people from all walks of life, from students to teachers, artists to dentists, and lawyers to pilots. And many of them never thought that someday they would enjoy learning economics. And also many of them who had ever learned economics and never appreciated economics, they don't know that economics is so interesting, was so relevant to their daily life. All these people are exactly the audience I want to talk to. Because real economics matters to everyone. And today, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts about this exciting experience. Perhaps it all began as another tale of two cities. I was born in Guangzhou, China, and grew up in a centrally planned economy. But my grandmother lived in Hong Kong, 100 miles south from us, which at that time was still a British colony. She would bring us fantastic goods that were simply unimaginable for us who are living in China at that time. As a child, I had never been in Hong Kong, but I imagined it must be a wonderful place if even the ordinary people there could have such wealth. This raised a nagging question in my mind. How could these two cities, were so similar in terms of culture and location, be so different in terms of their standard of living? I made a commitment to myself to find the answer. I studied and read whatever I could find, and gradually and fortunately, I found economics, a system of analysis that is most relevant and powerful to help me to find the answer. Over a span of some 30 years, I became an economics columnist for the Financial Times, based in London, Chinese version, and a PhD student at George Mason University, a postdoctoral researcher at Northwestern University School of Law, a professor of National School of Development at Peking University, and now a freelancer. I studied economics of real-world issues, and I teach economics that makes sense to ordinary people. My topic includes free trade, property rights, entrepreneurship, competition and regulation, institution and social norms, so on and so forth. The economic way of thinking gives us insight into all this and beyond. And that insight is backed up by serious research for those who are interested. The technology of information has had a major impact on the spread of economic idea. When 4G and smartphone technology became widely available in China, entrepreneurs rushed to provide audio programs that help people to utilize the time they spend in traffic, on the subway, or at the gym. Time that used to be wasted. But in order to add value, this technology has to be approached in the right ways. For me, the most valuable skill that I had to learn in order to run my online course was the ability to speak. You can't teach people economics through an audio program on their smartphone by simply taking classroom content and moving it online. When people listen to my program, they are cooking, they are walking, they are driving. And people don't cook, don't walk, or don't drive in a classroom. What people can do when they are cooking is to have a conversation. So that's the key. The right way to do it is to speak to them directly, and as you would do in a face-to-face conversation. So therefore, for every 10 minutes segment of my class, of my lecturing, it usually takes more than 1 hour for me to record in front of my editor, who knows nothing about economics and insists every single word I say must make sense to her. In this way, I make sure that the listeners of my course become the real audience rather than the bystanders. The unique way to speak in front of the microphone turns out to be a very welcome trick, which helps a lot to make my online course popular. However, there are always people who see things differently. As many successful audio courses, including mine, become widely noticed, they have drawn harsh criticism from believers in traditional teaching and learning methods. The critics say that systematic knowledge cannot be learned in scattered 10-minute segments. My response is that, as a matter of fact, even full-time students study multiple subjects in the same semester, let alone part-time students who extend their study lifetime long after they leave schools. And the critics also say that first-rated knowledge is already available for free, that you can learn directly from the great thinkers by reading the classics from Aristotle to Keynes, and reading free sources like Wikipedia. They say that pay costs customized for the convenience for the students must be simply providing third-rated knowledge. I think they are wrong for 3 reasons. The first reason is that they fail to distinguish between the process of the discovery of knowledge and the process of the use of knowledge. Of course, sometimes the use of knowledge is for free, but the discovery of the knowledge is very costly. There must be someone to pay for it. And the second reason the critics are wrong is that they fail to distinguish between the good of knowledge and the service of teaching. Why would anyone pay a physics professor to teach a class when they could just read Isaac Newton for free online or just buy a textbook? The answer should be obvious. They are paying the teachers to take the knowledge in those books and make it more accessible, to make it easier to understand, to make it easier to remember, and more importantly, to make it easier to apply in practice. In short, they are paying for the service of teaching. The third reason the critics are wrong is that they ignore the marketplace of ideas. Nobody has to pay for the courses. It's not compulsory. It's not taxpayer funded. Rather, I think the popularity of the online courses reflects the public's eagerness for knowledge, and the willingness to pay for them reflects their recognition of higher quality services of teaching. The critics also say that an economic course without mathematical tools is not scientific enough and might provide a distorted view of economics. I think this is narrow-minded. Math is not the only tool that economists have, and it is not even the most useful tool. Adam Smith founded the science of economics. He wrote in plain English. John Maynard Keynes, right here in your neighborhood, revolutionized the study of macroeconomics in the 20th century. He wrote in plain English too. And Ronald Coase, another British economist, one of my favorite, redefined the study of microeconomics in the 20th century. He wrote in plain English as well. None of them used mathematical tools or methods to convey their ideas. The fact that simple real-world explanation of economics make a more profound impact is no coincidence. Economist Armin Elshin used to say that the true test of whether anyone understands his subject is talking about is when he can explain it to someone who doesn't know anything about it. Stephen Hawking managed to explain the history of time to millions of readers, so I think good economists can likewise manage to explain basic economics to people who do not do economics as a profession. The second reason why simpler principles are usually more meaningful is that the real-world economy is full of uncertainty that economic modeling is not capable of handling. Yes, there are things that we know that we don't know. Sometimes we call this risk or probability. This is what mathematics and statistics are meant to deal with. But there are also things that we don't know that we don't know. We call this uncertainty. For uncertainty, mathematics can do very little. For example, in the year of 2008, after the financial crisis happened, the Queen asked an embarrassing question at the London School of Economics that why did no one see the crisis coming beforehand? And the official answer prepared by a group of eminent economists is that it was because of a failure of the collective imagination to understand the risk to the system as a whole. To pay attention to this, what is absent is the collective imagination, not the elegant mathematical model. So what we really need is imagination. Nowadays, economists are busy producing analysis on why a trade war has been inevitable. But how many of them can also provide us with mathematical models for precisely predicting what will be inevitable next month, next season, next year? There is a quote from British philosopher Carvey Reid that is often misattributed to John Maynard Keynes, that it is better to be vaguely right than exactly wrong. Paul Samuelson, who won the Nobel Prize for promoting the use of math in economics, is an excellent illustration of this. For decades, his introductory economic textbook contained a precise statistical model that attempted to predict in which year the economy of the Soviet Union would overtake the economy of the United States. Meanwhile, another economist, Nobel Prize winner F.A. Hayek, predicted instead that the Soviet economy would collapse. Hayek never said when this would happen, and in fact, he argued that it was impossible to say when. As we all know now, the Soviet economy never overtook the U.S. economy, and it did indeed collapse in 1989. With all his mathematical formula, Paul Samuelson's prediction was exact, but it was exactly wrong. Hayek's prediction was vague, but it was vaguely right. Milton Friedman once quipped about the divergence between the technology used by professional economists and the basic essence of economics, or the common sense of economics. He said that he saw many highly intelligent and even highly trained professional economists who know the words but don't get the music. As an economist who has been writing economic columns on a regular basis for 20 years, I'm still struck by the contrast between the increasing spread of economic education and the persistence of naive ignorance of economic regularity. This is a problem that can be observed in highly educated circles, not just in China, but also in the Western world. Let me give you a number of examples, a number of questions to see what kind of answer you would provide for these questions. Question number 1, can minimum wage law help poor country to get rid of poverty? Yes or no? Question number 2, did candle makers permanently lose their jobs to light bulb makers? Question number 3, does the trade deficit or a surplus on bilateral basis make any sense? Or do I have to buy the same amount from you that I sell to you in order to maintain a fair or equal trade? The last question, is there any goods such as a pencil marked made in China, literally made in China? There is a laundry list of questions that can be squarely answered with economic common sense. That common sense, what we call the economic way of thinking, is not only useful for evaluating the latest policy proposals, and it is also useful for understanding how economics affect us in our daily lives. Paul Samuelson once remarked, "I don't care who writes a nation's law or crafts its advanced treaty, as long as I can write its economic textbook." I agree with Samuelson's attitude. However, my online course is not just a simplified version of mainstream economic textbooks. It is also a novel approach to economic education in the sense of liberal art curriculum. In addition to that, I think I'm taking advantage of the technology that economists like Adam Smith, John Maynard Keynes, and Paul Samuelson never had. That is the widely used smartphone and high-speed data transmission, 4G, or the upcoming 5G technology. Using the latest technology, knowledge from paper and books can be reproduced and customized and made more accessible for studying, learning, and training. Today, the wall of the universities is being turned down. A much wider equality of educational opportunity is being achieved. A more practical way of teaching and learning economics has arisen, and a lot more ordinary people will now be able to hear the music of economics. Thank you very much.